There's no better time to spend with somebody than in the woods or on a mountain or somewhere where you don't have access to the outside world, right? My wife and I think like we had our kids extremely young, and we decided like we just had this bug to like we wanted to see the world. You know, we were probably 18, 19. We drove out to the Grand Canyon, you know, before the internet. So you're like, you know, saw our first like snow-peaked mountain, and it was just like, I think it was just like that bug that got set in us that we wanted to adventure. I thought I might be a professor like my dad, so that's kind of how it started here at Morehead State. Kind of decided that I wanted to do medical school, and I think got a great education to then pursue. You know, ended up going to the University of Kentucky for medicine. Yeah, after medical school, my wife and I decided we did want to try something outside to do residency. So we went to Massachusetts and then did residency there in emergency medicine. We went to New Zealand a year. And then I got into teaching wilderness medicine, which I didn't even really know was a big thing at that time. And when I came back to my academic position, they said, Ben, you know, you got to have a niche if you want to stay in academics. Like, what are you going to offer the program? And I said, I'm going to start a wilderness medicine fellowship. Like, just give me like 2 years. I'll do all the paperwork, set it up. My first fellow, we decided to climb a mountain in South America, which was one of the first 7 summits, was Aconcagua. And when we did it, I became good friends with the owner there. And I became friends with this other guy. And my wife and I, when we were in New Zealand, kind of always had this idea, like, what if we ran our own courses? And so I really set it up for the fellows. Wild Med Adventures really became about because I wanted our fellows that we were training to have the opportunity to do whatever we wanted. So like if the fellow said, I want to go to Mongolia, I'd be like, give me like a month. I'd be like, all right, we're going to Mongolia. I've got this trip set up, but like, how are we going to manage this? We've got 18 people of varying ages. Where's the nearest hospital? What's our communication devices? How are we going to set up a med kit? What happens when stuff goes wrong? What happens if somebody gets severely injured? So Wild Med Adventures kind of was a byproduct of actually a learning opportunity for the fellows. Even when I was in medical school, I think Herb Hitchcock got taught here at the university, put on some like ultras around the lake. And I'm like 24 years old. Dad's like, why don't you sign up for this ultra? I'm like, because I've ran like 8 miles. It's like my longest run. He's like, oh, you can do it. You know, so he pushed me in those ways. And so then when I got into mountaineering, he's like probably in mid to late 50s. I'm like, come on, Dad, let's get into mountain. Like, I'll get you into mountaineering. He's like, I'm not buying all that gear and stuff. Like, and so I went and took the course, and then I came back and was like, Dad, you're climbing Mount Rainier with me, man. We're gonna go do Mount Rainier. He's like, I was like, I can teach you. So then he's like, buys that gear. And then we kind of drug him into the mountains, and then he did Aconcagua with us, and then he's done Kilimanjaro twice. You know, and then he'd gotten a bout of thyroid cancer on one of the other mountains I climbed. That was the only one he wasn't there with me. And now he's doing great. So yeah, so we've climbed all over, and not just the 7 summits. I mean, we climbed in Guatemala and Mexico. We climbed the highest peak of Mexico, the highest in Guatemala. We've been all over the place. So yeah, he's definitely into the adventure. Yeah, so my daughter, she was at Montana State for the first couple of years, and she's like, I just want to be closer to home. And I think she loves being around like just being in that smaller community feel. So she transferred back this year. She's an adventurer for sure. She climbed Kili when she was like 12 or 13. And then she was the youngest person to climb this mountain in Mongolia. It's called Friendship Peak. And so she got to climb that with us. So yeah, so hopefully she'll continue the legacy adventure for sure. When we climbed Aconcagua, when I became friends with the owner of Annie's Mountain Guides, he's like, hey Ben, I want to run a medical education trip to Karstens Pyramid, which is in Indonesia or in West Papua. And I'm like, he's like, would you lead it as, you know, the medical? And so that was one of the 7 summits. And so when I climbed there, I met a vascular surgeon, great guy, Chris Imre, who's done like all the research on frostbite. So you start making all these little connections, right? And he was climbing the 7 summits, did a bunch of research on Everest, and he's like, I want to climb, Antarctica's my last one. So when a couple of years passed by, he's like, hey Ben, you want to run a trip down there? I want to, you know, and so we climbed Antarctica. I was like, I always want to go to Antarctica, you know, and then like we were like, well, we can easily do Kilimanjaro because it's like, you know, it's a little bit more accessible. So we ran a wild med trip on Kilimanjaro, and during this time we met another guy that was like, hey, I got a contact in Russia, man. This guy, this group, well, you can climb Elbrus. So then we were like, well, now I've climbed like, you know, 4 or 5 of these. I'm like, I think I'd like to go for all 7 of them. And then so like I wanted to do the Denali in North America's highest peak. I wanted to do it on our own. So I didn't want to guide. And so that was probably my biggest accomplishment. People always like, you climbed Everest, but like to climb Denali without a guide with your family, with family and dad, my dad, Bruce was on that trip. And my oldest son, the second time we went back. That was a really big accomplishment. And then it was just Everest, which I'd promised my wife I wouldn't even go to Nepal until our daughter graduated high school. She's like, just don't even go. Because there is a lot of there's a lot of risks, even if you're trying to be as careful as you can. So we got there, I guess the very beginning of April, like April 2nd, and then we trekked into base camp. We took clients, physicians and PAs and nurses and stuff up to base camp. I think we got there in like maybe day 16. And then they went back down and we stayed, and so you're up there another like 4 or 5 weeks, depending on weather, you could be a little bit longer. So I summited on the 17th, got home by the end of May. So I was gone basically all of April and May. So you're looking at 6 to 8 weeks. We're at base camp and we went through the ice fall for the first time, which is a really dangerous section where there's just a lot of avalanches and stuff. Like 3 Sherpas died right before we got to base camp because they got buried in the ice fall. And we got about an hour in where you're just getting warmed up and we hit this vertical ice and it was like 50 people. And like we're waiting and I'm like, this is just crazy. Like, and mentally I'm like, this is stupid. This isn't safe. This isn't really a good thing to do. So I could have went home right then and had a perfect time and been happy with the whole experience. But I woke up that morning, it was sunny. I was like, all right, I'm gonna make a couple of things. Mentally. One, I'd promised my wife, if there's another avalanche, someone dies in the ice fall, I'm not going through it again. And if I get caught in a long line, I'm turning around. I'm gonna make, and so like, I'm going for it, otherwise I've made up my mind. Trying to find a balance between pushing your limits and being reckless. And I think like Everest is starting to be on the reckless side of things because there's so many things you can't control. Long lines, people dropping stuff, frostbite or whatever it may be, avalanches through the ice fall that we know is dangerous, and there's like global warming, so there's more stuff, you can hear the things falling all around you. On summit day when we started a little late, so we went from camp 3 to camp 4, should take about 6 hours, and we were stuck on the Lhotse face and it took like 9. So by the time we got to high camp, we had a 2-hour break and we had to go for summit. And when we left it, we got a little late, so it was 8:30. So when we hit the first kind of incline, I'm looking at my Sherpa Pim, I'm like, we're not gonna make the cutoff time I want is like early. I don't wanna be up there like late afternoon, you get in trouble. So we got up to the summit at sunrise, but when we turned around and you get down near Hillary Step, the crowd, like you just see people just lined up, and there's no way to there's not like you can even walk beside of them. I was kind of perched letting people go around trying to find a space where we could on a sheer cliff, and so you're clipped into a safety line. So there's a safety line all the way to the summit, which is very different than most mountains too. And so I'm clipping around people. I clipped in the safety line, and it was like it would be like somebody just pushing you off the side of a mountain, you didn't see them, So like a guy fell, but they're slacking the safety line. You have a carabiner to that, so when he falls around the corner, it tensioned that line and just threw me off the mountain. But I tore my meniscus and had a bunch of stuff wrong with my knee. So when I got up, I had to first I'm like, all right, I'm good. I'm like alive, like holy. But the realization of like, I don't even have control of like some of these, some of the safety trying to get down. When I stepped up and I was like, realized how, the pain in my knee, I was like, I'll get down, but this is not gonna be fun. And then you're thinking, what if it was just a little harder? What if I fell just a little to the left? If I broke my leg there, I'm dead. I mean, there's nobody coming to get you. There's no way to get up. There's no way. So like, yeah, I mean, then you think about that. Like when people ask and you get back, they're like, oh, it was great. Well, yeah, if things go well, oh yeah, it was a great experience. A little to the left, a little to the right, and you don't come home. The thing with mountains is when you make it to the summit, it's halfway. No celebration until you're in the car. Most of the injuries and deaths happen on the descent. So people expend so much energy for that dream, for that goal, that they don't have enough energy to get down. And so trying to time that and understand your body to know that you're halfway when you get to the top, that you need to be feeling good when you get to the top. Like there was some quote, it was like, some people climb the mountain to see the world, and some climb it so the world sees them. That's kind of a cool, you climb a mountain just for the experience of the people and stuff, but I've never been somebody like, if things work out, I just want to have the experience. Like, I mean, obviously if you summit and you get down safe, it's awesome. But like the people you meet, like all the different cultures and experiences is like kind of what drew me to it.